Welcome to Spoilerpeeps Theater, a podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and I'm a member of Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
And my name is Dave Riedel. I write and I talk about movies. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. My pronouns are he, him, and I think that's everything.
Yes, sir, it is.
Yes,
well,
it is.
maybe not. I was going to say yes, for the purposes of this it is, but not, you know, for the purposes of your life.
Right. I can't squeeze my entire personality into that intro. You're just going to have to glean it from the rest of the show like everyone else.
And I think it's pretty apparent, your personality.
Yeah.
really
if you've been
quickly.
listening to the show for even 2 episodes, you've probably figured it out. So.
You know, it's funny. One of our listeners, hi, Dan. One of our listeners, Dan, has said on social media, he said something to me about, I was talking about a movie, and he's like, I don't know how you got through that movie, Megan, because Dave just kept interjecting really funny quips. And I was like, yeah, it's really hard each week to keep myself composed and stay on target.
Which movie was this?
I don't remember. I feel like I'm a bad person. Not a bad person. I'm a bad podcast host because I can't remember.
I remember that. He was talking about like the first show you were on.
Yes, that's it.
Yes.
That's it. It was the first show. Yes, when I was talking about the films for the Boston Women's Film Fest. Yes.
Yeah. I think I've toned it down since then, but who knows?
What?
I think I've gotten better about interrupting, or if I do interrupt, I say, I'm just going to break in here for a minute.
Oh, yeah. No, but yes. But I mean, as far as it is hard to stay on track when you're so very sharp and very funny, which I love.
Oh, thank you very much.
But it's very hard. It's like, wait, what was I talking about? Oh, wait, right. I have to circle back.
Well, now you know what it's like being me. It's like I forget what I'm talking about mid-sentence all the time. So
it is kind of an interesting thing sometimes when you're having this like circuitous conversation. You're like, wait, where did I start? Where am I going?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Like, stitching time saves, I don't know, pork. Yeah,
Sandwiches? What?
Yeah.
Anyway, but this week, as you can probably tell, it's just Dave and I. We are holding down the fort while Evan is on vacation, but he will be back next week. And before we get into the 2 films that we'll be discussing this week, we want to tell you about our Patreon. Every week we put out bonus episodes. So if you're a patron, go check it out. If you're not a patron, consider joining. For $5 a month, you get access to bonus episodes. And this week we talk about the rom-com What If. It's a Canadian rom-com. It's also known as the F Word. It stars I almost said Daniel Craig. Dave's been calling him Daniel Craig in the Patreon. It's Daniel Radcliffe.
And I just want to say, it was an accident when I called him Daniel Craig, but then I got it stuck in my head.
Well, now it's stuck in my head because I almost said Daniel Craig. That's okay. But yeah, it's Daniel Radcliffe and Zoe Kazan. And we had a great time talking about this underseen rom-com. And it's rare that we have a rom-com that neither of us has seen.
Right.
So that was it was a fun time. So go check it out. This week, we have 2 films we will be discussing. We have the Irish drama, God's Creatures, and we have the horror film, the reboot of Hellraiser. So we're going to kick things off talking about God's Creatures. And like I said, it's an Irish drama. It's directed by Selah Davis and Anna Rose Holmer, both of whom worked on the film The Fits, which is such a fantastic film. It was, the year it came out, it was one of my top 10 films. God's Creatures is written by Shane Crowley. It's based on a story that he wrote with the producer Fodla Cronin O'Reilly. I hope I said that correctly, but I probably did not. And the film stars Emily Watson and Paul Mescal, Aisling Franciosi, and co-starring Declan Conlon, Tony O'Rourke, Marion O'Dwyer, Brendan McCormick, and Laylor Roddy. And this is the synopsis from A24, who distributed the film. In a windswept fishing village, a mother is torn between protecting her beloved son and her own sense of right and wrong. A lie she tells for him rips apart their family and close-knit community in this tense, sweepingly emotional epic. Okay, so let's dig into the plot a little bit, and then I want to hear, Dave, I know you have a lot of thoughts, or maybe not a lot of thoughts, but you have some opinions, of course, as you always do. And I have a lot of opinions. But before we get into those opinions, I want to flesh out a little bit what this secret is. So basically, to cut to the chase, the secret is, so her son Brian, Aileen is the protagonist, Emily Watson, and her son Brian comes home, and Dave and I were talking off mic that it's very clear right away he's a scumbag. Like, it's very clear. There's something about the way it's framed, the way he enters. You just know, Right.
But I should interject, and say that he's not presented as a scumbag. He's presented as like a nice guy.
Yes.
And it's weird. He's not squirrely or kind of, mean looking or anything like that. He looks like a nice, normal dude. And he acts like a nice, normal dude. But there is something that the moment you see him, you're like, nope, this guy's bad news.
Yep. I think it has to do, and we'll get into this more, but I think I loved this film. I know you were less enamored with it, but I think it has to do with the framing. I think it has to do with the very eerie, discordant string score as well as it turns percussive and it's tense, and it has to do with Emily Watson and the way she's watching him. I think it has to do with a lot of the reactions.
And it's awake, and he doesn't know it's awake.
That's true. So he's coming in kind of like, woohoo, hey everybody, it's a party, I'm back. So
his mom's like, what the fuck? And he's like, ew. And then he goes over to this woman that he's known his whole life, and he's like, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Right. Yes. Because he's been living, you get the sense for years, he's been in Australia and he hasn't been home in a very long time, but now he's back and he moves in with his mother and his father and grandfather, who is ill. It seems like he's had a stroke or something to that effect. And Aileen also has a daughter who has a baby, and she watches the baby frequently. So anyway, they're in this fishing community and they're working, and you get the sense that everybody knows everybody. It's such a small town and things are going along, and you're like, do. And then everything goes awry. And it goes awry when Aileen and her son Brian are in a pub, and they run into Aileen's coworker Sarah, who you get the very distinct sense is an ex of Brian's. And you don't know if they were actually in a relationship or if they hooked up, but they were together in some way, and they were close a long, long time ago, like back when they were in like high school or something. They're in their late 20s now. So a long time has passed, and they're at the pub, and the mom leaves. Aileen goes home, and then that's it. And they're still there. And then she gets called to go down to the police station like a week or two later, because charges have been brought against him that there's been a sexual assault. There's been a rape. The cop asks her, oh, Brian says he was at home all night and he never went anywhere. Is that true? And without skipping a beat, without missing a moment, she's like, yep, he was home. Yep, we were there the whole night. Doesn't hesitate, doesn't waver, immediately tells that lie. And the rest of the film is about just that, the lie and the ramifications of that, and how that reverberates throughout their family and the town. And and I definitely want to get more into the plot as we go along. But Dave, I've been doing a lot of talking. I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think of this?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's much more plot heavy than that. I mean, that's kind of the story. It's basic.
I think it is, but
well, yeah. I mean, but it does take them a long time to get to that scene, because you read the description, you're like, something shitty happens. You're like, all right, when is it going to happen? You're like, oh, someone drowns in like the first scene. You're like, oh, that's not the shitty thing. That's just an occurrence in this fucking seaside fishing town. We should mention that drowning does circle back around.
Yeah, drowning's a big theme in this, because there's some kind of like superstition, like people don't teach their kids to swim even though they live in a seaside town. And Erin, Aileen's daughter, is like, I'm teaching my son to swim. I'm not going to have him drown. It's ridiculous. So right. And then more drowning happens later.
More drowning happens, which is foreshadowed so clumsily that I was just like, if this character doesn't drown by the end of this movie, then these people don't know what kind of fucking movie they're making. But then he drowns. So,
and yes, that's Brian we're talking about, Brian, the rapist.
Yeah. Well, like one of the first times you see him, he's after he's like arrived back home, is he gets, I don't know if he's doing it on his own or if he's gotten a job for somebody, I can't remember. But he's wearing waders and he's in the water about waist deep, maybe a little higher. And he has apparently forgotten how strong the tide is, or the undertow, or whatever you want to call it. And somebody has to pull him out of the water.
Yes.
And says to him something to the effect of, hey, man, you got to remember that this is like the tide comes in really quick. You don't want to get, and he's like, yeah, you're right. Geez, that was fucked up. And then, of course, he drowns at the end of the movie and his mother decides not to save him. So, even hides in the bottom of their dinghy so she doesn't have to listen to him scream for help. Just in case you wondered how it ended. But anyway, the crime, or I should say, because you don't see that, it's presented as it happens off screen.
And I love that you don't see it, actually.
I do
think
too.
That's great.
If for no other reason than I just don't want to see somebody get sexually assaulted on screen anymore.
No, and that's the thing. And that's what's so interesting is because Aisling Franciosi was in Jennifer Kent's The Nightingale, which is also about rape and is a brutal, it's an amazing film. It's stunning, but it is so
I still
triggering.
haven't seen it.
It's so triggering. It's so upsetting, and it is graphic. And like I said, it deals with rape and trauma in a really great way, but unfortunately it is really triggering. And that's what I really liked about this, is that it's not exploitative, it's not gratuitous, but it happens. And that's why I think this is a brilliant film, because you see the ramifications of rape culture, women being complicit in protecting men who are rapists, in victim blaming of women, in how society protects men, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, there is some victim blaming that goes on in this. I don't think ever in front of what's her character's name? What's her Sarah. I don't think it actually goes on in front of her. But I mean, it's gossipy.
Yes.
There's a whole bunch of gossipy shit about the whole thing.
Well, there's those jokes made in front of her when her and her friend go into the pub.
When they go to the pub.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah,
you're right.
After the charges have been made and after going to court, she and her friend go to the pub to get a drink, and Brian's there, Aileen's there, a bunch of dudes are there, and the pub owner's like, nope, we're not serving you. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, we reserve the right to refuse service. And as they're walking, and Sarah says, you can all fucking go to hell. And as they're walking out, like turning to leave, all of the dudes are laughing and joking and mocking them, and the camera like stays on Aileen, which is really telling and interesting.
Well, I think that's the moment when Aileen has like a come to Jesus moment in her mind, you know?
Yeah, I think she has a lot of come to Jesus moments, but that might be the most salient.
That's the most impactful one.
Yeah, that's the tipping point, I think. Because that's the thing, like throughout, over and over and over again, you know, and I love that her daughter Erin is like, when she's like, well, we don't know what happened. And she's like, you haven't even talked to Sarah about what happened. You should hear her side. And because Aileen's like, well, maybe it was Sarah's ex-boyfriend. And Erin's like, well, maybe, but maybe it was also Brian, you know?
Yeah,
and
it's pretty clear that. Yeah, it's pretty clear that Erin thinks her brother is definitely a scumbag, you know?
Yes.
Or if she doesn't necessarily know for sure that he did it, she's pretty sure that he could have done it, you know?
Right.
And I think he did it. No ifs, ands, or buts. I think he absolutely
100%.
assaulted her.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. There's just something about the whole nonchalance of his person. It's like malevolent nonchalance, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense. And Aileen even calls him out on that. And that's what stops her from ultimately saving him when he's drowning, is he's so cavalier. He's so just like you said, nonchalant. He's so whatever. And she's like, what's wrong with you? She's like, you feel nothing. You're not concerned about, you know, Sarah. You're not concerned about what you did. And she's like, you know,
he
basically
says something
like, are you dead inside? Like, where's your heart?
Well, and he says something to the effect of, stop pretending that I'm this person you think I am, or something like that.
Like putting him on a pedestal or something to that effect. Like as if she's been lionizing him this whole time. Which,
she has up to a point. You're right. It's her. I mean, I think she knows that he did it right from the moment he's accused, you know? But she just lies because she's his mother.
I think she's also lying to herself, because she says to Erin, she's like, he's never touched a woman. He's never laid a hand on a woman in his life. And it's like, and that was an interesting line, because I'm like, how do you know that, first of all? Yeah. Right, because you're not with him all the time. And then what's really interesting about it later is that when she goes up to him, when he's like all handsy and touchy with another woman in the pub, and she tells the girl, she's like, you should go home now. And he gets pissed off and he puts his hands on his mother. And that's why when the father jumps in and then they have that altercation, but it's like
fracas.
Yeah, but it's interesting because it's like, oh, you thought he would never put his hands on a woman and yet he just did it to you. And so, but yeah.
Yeah. I kind of wondered whether the reason Brian went to Australia was to escape some, accusation like this, but nobody ever makes a reference to that, so who knows?
No one does. That is true. But this is why I love this movie, because I know you and I were talking off mic and you said it was very predictable. And yeah, I predicted everything in this movie too. But to me, I have less of a problem with that. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But I think this is an incredibly complex and layered film, and that's what I really love about it. What I think is interesting is that at the end of the film, after Brian's dead and Aileen goes to Sarah's house, which she's inherited from her parents, and earlier in the film, she had said to Brian, he's like, he says to her, he's like, I'm surprised you never got out of here. And she's like, well, everything I ever wanted was right here. Why would I leave? I didn't need to leave. And she's very clearly packing up. She's had enough. She's getting the fuck out of town. And she's talking about the wind in the houses and how you can hear the ghosts and you can hear it. And she's like, all these old houses have the same ghosts and the same ghost stories. And I'm wondering, is that like a dig? Like, this isn't the first time this has happened, or there are other dudes who've done this, or is it just kind of like this is in the ether? You know, there are creepy men and there are communities that are going to protect them. Yeah, I agree with you.
I think it's micro and macro.
I agree. I agree. But that's what I love about it is it's working on these multiple levels. Like it's working on a very literal level. It's working on a metaphoric level, micro, macro. Like you said, that's what I love about this.
Yeah, I still don't hold it in the esteem that you do, but I think it does. I think she definitely means like there's this macho bullshit rape culture here. Yes. But then I also know women this has happened to, and that brings it down to the micro level, Yes.
100%. I completely agree with you. Because that also, circling back again, there's a great scene between Aileen and her daughter Erin outside the funeral of the grandfather of the family. And they're talking and Aileen's like, the world's all turned upside down and I just don't understand it. And Erin's like, no, it's not. She's like, it might be turned upside down for you because like the world might seem like it's turning for you, but this is the same fucked up world it's always been. It's, it's the same thing. Nothing has changed. And that's very telling too. And it's interesting that Aileen hasn't seen this before. Like she's shielded her eyes or has ignored it or whatever until she can't ignore it anymore.
Well, there are two things that are interesting about the whole family dynamic. One is watching Aileen like wake up to her son's scumbagness over the course of the movie.
Yes.
And the other thing is like Brian's father really dislikes him. Like Brian's father he doesn't like his own son, and they never really explain why,
That's true.
And I don't know if it's because I think it's generally like the fathers and sons thing. It's your son didn't end up like you thought his potential could be, And I don't know anything I don't really think you learn anything about the father other than he doesn't like Brian.
Yeah, that's true.
That's kind of his character arc.
Yeah.
But I liked that aspect of it. I liked that, there was somebody from the beginning. He's like, he's a shithead.
I never liked him or trusted him.
From the moment he arrived, from the moment the stork dropped him off, I was like, fuck this guy. We got to send him back. I wish there had been more Sarah just because I like Aisling What's-Her-Face. I can't pronounce her last name. It's very Italian.
Franciosi.
Thank you. She's got an Irish first name and an Italian last name that are both difficult for an American such as myself to pronounce. I had to look up the pronunciation of her first name, but I was like, I'm pretty sure it's Aisling. And then I was like, I was right.
Yeah.
Just because there's been enough Saoirse Ronans and, Colin Toibin novels. And anyway, Yeah. So what was I saying? Something stupid. So
No, you weren't. No. You were saying something great. You were saying you wish there was more Sarah because Aisling Franciosi is a great actress, which she is. She's fantastic.
She's quite fine in everything I've seen her in. Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I agree that I wish there was more. Having said that, I really like that the film ends with her, that we get that long take of her driving out of town and we kind of follow her. So I agree. I wish we got more of her and more of her perspective, but I do really like that the film ends with her. I think that's how it should be. It's really nice. And also, speaking of her, my favorite scene, and I think this is the tensest scene in the film, and I think it's the best. Yeah, I love it. That wake where they're at the receiving line.
Oh my God, that is horrible.
Oh, it's so good and so awful.
I was just like, what is, first of all, I was thinking, why did she go to this wake?
Yeah.
Because it's like, you owe this family nothing.
Right, but she's clearly close to Aaron, because they hug and she gives her condolences.
She and Aaron are friends. That's true.
So but that is what really sucks is she stayed away from work because of this.
And Aileen, as we should mention, is her supervisor at work.
Yes, that's right. So she called out of work and missed 15 different shifts because of this. And so, she can't stay away forever. I mean, I guess she could, and she does, and eventually leave. But it is a great thing. It's why did she show up? But at the same time, it's well, why shouldn't she show up? She should be able to pay respects to her friend. But it's great. So I love that she pays her respects to the father, skips right over Aileen. Goes to Aaron and hugs her. And then stupid Brian sticks his hand out to shake and she spits on him. Such a big loogie. It's great. Yeah. But then the guy behind her grabs her arm in a really gross way. And I love that Aileen is don't fucking touch her. And it's ooh. It's that's right,
that's
Aileen.
when you're oh, Aileen's come completely around the other way.
Yes.
And then I was just so when's Brian gonna drown?
You're just waiting it out.
It's just I mean the movie's only 15 minutes longer. It's gotta happen soon. And then it does. And it actually happens really quickly. He only gets out one or two yelps and then he's just under.
Yep.
Yeah. By the way, if you've never been caught in a hard current, man, that is some scary shit. So,
I have not.
Yikes.
And I hope I don't get caught in a hard current. That is,
I don't know if you call it a hard current. Heavy current, strong current. That's what it is. Or, a riptide, maybe. I don't know. There's all sorts of different things that can pull you under. So, don't fuck with the ocean, I guess is the short version. Especially if you're in an Irish drama where you're the antagonist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I have to say, I know people really like Paul Mescal from Normal People, which I haven't seen yet.
Right. Somebody told me to watch that I would love it.
I want to see it too because I like Daisy Edgar Jones and I know she's in it too. So I do want to see it. But he's great in this. He's such a creep and he's so
really good.
Yeah. And Emily Watson, of course, is always great, but she's outstanding in this. And Aisling Franciosi is great in this. This has got some powerful, powerful performances. It's really good.
Emily Watson's performance is so controlled. It's really understated too in a good way.
I completely
but
agree with you.
Emily Watson is really good at doing the simmer, the simmering pot.
Yes.
And she really uses that to great effect here. So.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that kind of mirroring her performance. This is a really subtle film in so many ways. And I love the cinematography in this. One of the things I loved is when Erin goes to see Sarah to check on her and she doesn't know about the rape yet, but she's just going to check on her. And because Erin's kind of been missing or not around. And there's
Sarah's been missing?
I mean, Sarah's been missing. Sorry, not Erin. Yes, thank you.
You did what I always do. You switched
I know, right? I switched
names.
them. So there's a very slow zoom out of Sarah. And then kind of the inverse of that, when Aileen is at the police station being asked about Brian and she immediately lies, giving him his alibi to cover for him. It's very slow zoom in. And I kind of like that. There's like that kind of mirroring, but also in an inversion way. I love that. And I've already mentioned the score. I love the score. This might be one of my favorite scores of the year in a film. I love how creepy it is.
It's a really bizarre, eerie score.
It's
almost like a horror movie.
Yes, it is. It's so unsettling.
And
it's so
super
uncomfortable.
Percussion heavy.
Yes, I love that. And I love, along with the percussive sound, I love the like breathing, like the like, like it's almost like kind of like Lamaze breathing, but like I love that. It's
definitely eerie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I wonder if you noticed this. You probably did. The entire movie is like overcast or raining, except when Sarah leaves, it's bright and sunny when she's driving out of town.
Yes.
So,
good for her.
It doesn't take a lot of effort to like find a drab sky in Ireland, but still.
Very true. Yeah.
Well chosen.
I agree. And I love the look of this film. And I'm not surprised because like I know I talked about The Fits earlier, and The Fits is, if you haven't seen it, it's such a great film. It's about a girls' dance team and girls getting fits, and it's a psychological drama.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm using fits in air quotes because but it's really fantastic. It's stunning cinematography. It's incredible. And I love that this film is stunning cinematography again and kind of dealing with different issues, but there's kind of some similarities as far as themes. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
I love this film. Suffice it to say, I was really a huge fan of The Fits, so I was very excited to see this, and this blew me away. I loved it.
You know what I think is the most interesting thing about this is one of the directors, Anna Rose Holmer, is American.
Mm-hmm. Yes, she is.
So, I mean, that I don't know if that has anything to do with anything, but in a movie that's very Irish, you have one of the two directors is American.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and what I love is that Sayla Davis was the editor on The Fits, so I love that. That's why. Yeah, so I like
their
that
working relationship continues.
Yeah, I love that. So, but yeah, and I was noticing the editing on this, which if you have an editing background and then you're a director, it's kind of, even though she was not the director, Sayla Davis was not the director, she was not the editor on this, it's still interesting to kind of see great touches. But anyway, I could go on and on about this film. I think there's so much to unpack, so much to discuss. I loved it, but we should probably move on. Dave, do you have any final thoughts on this film?
Nah. I mean, we really covered a lot of ground. It's funny. I respect this movie a lot. I just don't. I was just like, eh.
It just didn't fully blow your socks off.
It didn't.
Yeah, I think the final thing I will say is that I'm always excited for more films that deal with misogyny and rape culture, and especially from women directors and women writers that are women-centric. And this is really looking at it from a very intriguing angle. And, what do you do when you find out a family member is a monster? But yeah, I love it. I love it on a technical level, and I love it on a thematic level. And yeah, this was great. But all right, let's move on to our next film, the horror film, the reboot, Hellraiser. So this Hellraiser is directed by David Bruckner, and it's written by Ben Collins and Luke Piotrowski from a screen story they co-wrote with David S. Goyer. And it stars Odessa A'zion and Jamie Clayton. Co-stars Brandon Flynn, Goran Vishnish. I never pronounce his name correctly. Drew Starkey, Adam Faison, Aoife Hines, Selena Lowe, and Chaim Abbas. Oh, I love Chaim Abbas. But anyway, let me give you the synopsis from Hulu. A reimagining of Clive Barker's 1987 horror classic from director David Bruckner, in which a young woman struggling with addiction comes into possession of an ancient puzzle box, unaware that its purpose is to summon the Cenobites, a group of sadistic supernatural beings from another dimension. That is true. Mm-hmm. So just to flesh it out a little bit more, Riley, who is the protagonist, she is in recovery, and she just got out of rehab, and she's living with her brother and her brother's boyfriend and their roommate. And yeah, she starts dating this guy who she met in 12-step program. And he's like, hey, come and I got this shipment at my job. And it's a safe. Let's crack it open. Nobody's come to claim it. And they crack it open and what's inside but the puzzle box. And so she's intrigued by it. And he's like, you can have it and we'll sell it. And, we can split the money. And so she takes it. And yes, horrible things happen because that's what happens when you start doing the puzzle box, if you know Hellraiser at all. But even before that, the film opens with a billionaire in his compound. And he has had his lawyer, who's played by Jaime Bass, go to Belgrade to get this puzzle box. And then he basically lures a dude into this room and has the guy do the puzzle box, and then his finger is cut on it, and then he's dragged away to another dimension and tortured. Because that's what happens.
I mean, that's kind of what happens in the first one too, sorta.
Yeah. That is true. But Dave, I am dying. I read your Letterboxd review, so I already kind of know what you think about it, but I'm dying to know what your thoughts are on this film.
Oh, wait a minute. What is my Letterboxd review? Here we go. Guaranteed to not tear your soul apart. I don't know if you remember this, listeners, but the Clive Barker's movie version of this, which came out in 1987,
Yes.
long ago, which I saw when I was a kid, and I wouldn't say that it scared me, but it's super fucking creepy.
It's intense.
It's intense, and the effects are
intense.
practical, and they're really good. And
Yep.
I don't know that Clive Barker was necessarily the right choice to direct it, but I don't know who would have been the right choice, actually.
David Cronenberg?
Maybe. And I always thought that it was interesting that the star of it is Scorpio from Dirty Harry, except he's, I guess, a good guy technically in Hellraiser. But what I liked about the original let's not talk about the original because they're different movies. But I think I'm really done with the recovering drug addict alcoholic trope in horror movies. I think I've just had enough.
Oh.
Because the whole metaphor of you destroy everything you touch with your addiction and here's how it plays out in real life. I mean, I don't know if you could be any less subtle other than if you stuck a bunch of hooks in somebody and pulled their skin apart. I mean, it's just like, it's just so stupid and so disrespectful. And I'm not a person who I think you should underestimate an audience's intelligence generally. But like, it's so insulting to any audience. It's just like, this is what we're doing. And I also didn't like that, the first character to die is the gay brother. It's like either the gay person or the person of color dies first in these horror movies. Now, I should mention that Clive Barker is gay, and maybe it's like an homage to him. I have no idea. That would surprise me. But I just found this... not in the way it wants to be, torturous and stupid. And I thought the main performance she was fine. I mean, she was okay. I did like some of the creature get-ups.
Yeah.
The one that I didn't think actually Pinhead was so creepy. The one who creeped me out was, I don't remember her name. I don't know. She's the other one who talks a lot.
Yeah.
Like Pinhead.
So not the Wailer, it's the other one, and I think that's played by Selena Lowe. Yeah, she was my favorite too.
Yeah, and then of course the biter clicker one. That one's
that was so creepy.
I think that one's in like Hellraiser 2, right? I mean, that's not.
Yeah.
I've seen that one somewhere. But it's definitely not in Hellraiser. I think in Hellraiser the only ones you meet are Pinhead and then the woman. I don't remember. Anyway, when I said Hellraiser, by the way, I meant the first one.
Yes.
I just think, first of all, I don't understand why this movie's 2 hours long. Like,
that is a good question.
Nothing happens in this movie has got like 35 minutes of not even exposition. It's just like characters doing shit before they come into possession of the box, And the whole idea that there's somebody pulling the strings in this one. I mean, what I liked about the first one was they go to this house and Andy Robinson, who played Scorpio in Dirty Harry, he's just like his brother is just like there, half dead, escaping the Cenobites, and convinces Andy Robinson's wife, with whom he had an affair at one point, to like bring bodies back so he can absorb their blood and become human again. And that's the plot of Hellraiser.
Yeah.
Great. This one has got fucking, like, first we got to find the box, and then there's somebody paying the boyfriend from the 12-step program, Goran, what's his face from ER, who is a much better actor than this deserves.
Oh, he's so much better.
He's such a fine actor.
He really is. I love him.
And
but
then
not
the whole idea, the Cenobites give you a, quote, gift, unquote, which will make you suffer interminably.
Yes.
But he chooses no gift at the end, so they reward him with Leviathan being the boss? What kind of sense does that make? I mean, okay, so Leviathan is a sea creature, right? But it also means like the big, boundless, huge, whatever. Mm-hmm. And therefore the most powerful one or whatever. And it's just like, okay, so his skin's gotten torn off and he's full of hooks and all that shit, and that's unfortunate. But now he gets to like fucking like command people in the weird demon afterlife. How is that punishment? I mean, good Lord. And then also I'm getting really, really tired of dumb secondary characters that I don't care about, but also just torturing and murdering dumb secondary characters that I don't care about. Like the roommate. Like, what's the main character's name? The stupid main character? What's her name?
Karen. I don't know. I'm saying Karen. I don't know what it is, actually.
Yeah, stupid main character. Whatever. Like,
wait, the main character or the roommate?
No. The main character.
That's Riley.
Of course, her name's Riley because it's the fucking 21st century. But the roommate, whose name I think is Nora.
Wait a minute.
I'm just saying, if this movie came out in 1987 like it did, her name wouldn't be Riley. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would, because she's the final girl. It most certainly would be Riley. It would be a gender neutral name. I would bet my life on it.
The final girl in the first Hellraiser is called Kirsty.
Yeah, one movie. Do you know how many gender neutral names there are in slashers?
No. Of course I do. You know how many slashers I watch.
That's correct. And this is not a slasher, but I'm just saying.
But Nora, it's Nora as the roommate, and like Nora just gets like torn. Like the skin on her back, like ripped away from the rest of her body. And it's just like, this poor woman who is only trying to help out her stupid friend. And this is what happens. I don't know why it bothered me so much, but it really did. I was just like, this just fucking sucks. I will say that the CGI work is surprisingly good. Not when they're ripping away like at the end when they're ripping away Goran from ER's face and stuff. That looks really corny. But like the makeup work for the Cenobites is good. And then when like the rooms change and like the secret doors open up and stuff like that. That stuff all looks really good.
That's my favorite.
But the pace of this is so deadeningly slow. And there's just like, you're just sitting around waiting for something to happen, and then it happens, and then you got to wait some more, and then just like the stupid plot twist of, oh, the boyfriend from the 12-step program was targeting Riley, and he actually works for Goran from ER. Fuck you. Bullshit. I know that David Bruckner did The Night House, which is a much superior film.
Yes, it is.
But
I think a big part of that is because of Rebecca Hall too, because she gives a phenomenal powerhouse performance.
But it's also a better idea than this. I mean,
it is a much better idea. But what I will say about that I think is interesting that The Night House and Hellraiser have in common is what you were talking about with the changing of the rooms. Yes. I think this actually uses space incredibly well. I think the way the space changes, like when they're in the back of the cab and how it expands, I think that's really cool. I think when they're in the estate, that's Voight's or Goran from ER.
Voight, that's his name.
Yeah. Well, I think when they're in his estate and the rooms keep expanding because of the the puzzle box is causing it because the other dimension is opening. I love that. And I love the hidden walls, the secret passages. It kind of was giving me like Bruno from Encanto vibes. Like, I loved it. So I thought the production design, the costuming, the CGI, I think all of that worked really well. And the aesthetics are great. So I liked this a lot more than you did for that reason.
It just pissed me off. Like, it just made me, I wouldn't even say that it made me angry. It sounds
like it.
It does. But I kind of get worked up about this shit.
That's true. You do.
It just pissed me off because it was all just, I just found it all just kind of dumb. And I don't mean to I don't want to yuck your yum, as the kids would say. But they're talking about food specifically. But the point stands.
Yes.
I don't want to shit all over it because I know that you enjoyed it more than I did. But at the same time, it just didn't work for me so profoundly that it's kind of hard to speak about it in a neutral way.
I mean, I don't think you do need to speak about it in a neutral way. I think you had strong feelings about it, and I think that shows, and I think that's important. And here's the thing: I liked this for the reasons I just said. But I agree with you. There's some serious issues with this. Like, I think the lead performance...
Do tell.
Yeah. I think the lead performance by Odessa A'zion is not good. I did not like it at all. I mean, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, is she believable as someone in recovery? Sure.
Yeah.
So on that level, it kind of works. But also, I didn't give a shit about what was happening to her. I didn't give a shit about her reactions. I didn't care. So, I mean, the fact that I'm feeling nothing from her or any of the other characters, that's a huge problem. Yeah. So that's a serious issue. Really nothing about these characters except she has a gay brother and his boyfriend is gay and that's it. And she just got out of rehab and then they have a nice roommate, Nora, and that's it. You don't know. Considering this movie is 2 hours long, shouldn't we know a lot about these characters?
Should know a lot.
We know
especially
nothing.
Considering it takes 35 minutes for anything to happen with the box, you should spend that 35 minutes doing character work.
Right.
But instead, you're spending 35 minutes with the brother chastising the sister and then the boyfriend being like, we got to break into this warehouse.
Right. And and that's the thing. I think this is that's a massive problem with editing. I think it could have been much tighter in its editing. I think this needed much more character development. It is weird that it takes so long to get going. And then you're right. It's very stop and start. Weirdly though, I didn't find the pacing arduous. I was still really interested. And I think because the visuals and the design were so captivating to me that I was kind of like, where is this going? What's going to happen? And I think it's really, another really interesting point that we haven't talked about yet is I think it's, because there's been a lot of buzz about it. I think it's very interesting that Jamie Clayton is the priest, aka Pinhead, which I think is interesting because they never say, because Clive Barker hated the term Pinhead and they never say it in this film. I don't know. It's weird because it's everybody knows who Pinhead is, but Clive Barker never actually uses that himself in his story. But and they call her the priest. And I love that a trans woman is playing the role of the priest or Pinhead. And I think that's really cool. And I think it's cool just because we need more trans actors getting parts in general. But I think it's also really cool because this is such a body horror heavy film. And there's something interesting about the way bodies are changing in this film, and that there's a trans woman who's in charge. Although that also is kind of, I don't know. You can look at it a couple ways. You can look at it oh, isn't that cool? Or you can be like, oh, are they saying that trans bodies are scary? But I didn't take that. That's not the message.
I don't think this movie is smart enough to ask that question.
That's not what I got from this movie anyway, and maybe because you're right, it's not smart enough. But I think it's really cool. And I know there was a lot of backlash. People were like, oh, why is this movie so woke? Which is so stupid. But I think it's really great. And I think it's cool. And the other thing is, like you said, Clive Barker is a gay man. And if you've ever read a single book or story by Clive Barker, there are gay themes just pouring out of his work.
Yeah, they're pretty gay.
Yeah, it's super gay. You cannot escape those themes. And also, one of my favorite books is Imagica by Clive Barker, and one of the characters is trans, which is really cool. But anyway, I digress.
And he was out like from the beginning, right?
Yes.
But yeah,
he's been out for
that.
a long, like decades. So yeah, I don't even know if he was
and
ever.
He's also a riot,
closeted.
by the way. He's a great interview.
Yes, yes, he is. That is true. But yeah, so I don't even know where I was going with that. I was talking about the things I liked and the things I did not like. But what I wanted to talk about is because I think what you're saying about the trope of an addict or someone in recovery, I think that's a really, really important point because it is such a trope. And I'm watching and at first I was really fascinated by it. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is going to be a really interesting metaphor or allegory about addiction. And, there's something interesting about it at the very end. The fact that Riley's like, nope, I don't want your gifts. And I was thinking about it because I was like, okay, it's kind of cool in a way because she doesn't want to numb herself and she doesn't want the instant gratification, I guess, of her brother coming back. Like she has to sit with that pain. She has to sit with that trauma and that guilt that, it's because of her and her choices. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. But then I'm also like, but it's also a really disgusting message. Like, oh, you're an addict, so everything you touch, like you said, is destroyed and everything turns to shit. Yeah. And so it's like, on the one hand, I'm like, oh, that's kind of an interesting angle. But then I'm also like, but it's really gross. And I think it comes back to, this is something I said last week. I think it's going to be my new mantra. We need more people who are writers and filmmakers who are trauma informed, and we need more writers and filmmakers who are informed about addiction. And, this is really a gross kind of addiction blamey approach and lens. And then there is something really unsettling and bothersome about it. So I completely agree with you.
Yeah, the whole, I don't even remember what they call the gift that they give her. I was going to say longing. That's not right.
Lamentation?
Lamentation. That's right. And it's just like, all of the other gifts are physical. And this is the one mental gift. I mean,
I guess.
Okay, so you're going to sit there in misery for the rest of your life. But that's also just kind of it's interesting in the sense that, yes, lots of people lament, but so do lots of addicts, recovering addicts and alcoholics. But so I was kind of like, well, they sort of get that right. But it's also like, this is our one choice. Like the noble choice she makes is to suffer. Ay. And also, I don't think lamentation is on their list of gifts. There are 5 gifts you can choose from. I don't think that's one of them. But I don't remember specifically because she's like, I don't want any of your gifts, blah, blah, blah. Like, because one of them says to her, it's like, oh, you're going to choose resurrection or whatever. And she's like, no, right. I know my brother's gone, And as they have learned by watching Voight or Goran, what's his face from ER, all of the gifts are like, the gifts that keep on giving in a really bad way.
Yeah, it's like a monkey's paw. Like it's, you can't win with those gifts. It's going to be terrible. You're going to be tortured. Literally.
I don't remember. I need to watch the original Hellraiser because I don't remember. I don't think that there are gifts per se. I think that the idea is like that the Cenobites don't distinguish between, and they kind of get to this in this one.
Yep.
They don't distinguish between pleasure and pain. It's just all sensation, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what they say in this. Well, they don't ever say explicitly, we like it's all, they do say blah, 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 it's sensation. Like one of the Cenobites says that, but it's Goran from ER who's like, all of the sensation results in pain or whatever he says. And also it's just like, look at them all. Do you really think they're going to bestow upon you like fucking euphoria? I don't think so, so like use your fucking head, Just like
well, here's the thing I'm thinking. Like, so, okay, Voight is going through, like, you have to go through like 7 people and then you get like an audience with, God or whoever's in charge or whatever. Like, that's the whole thing. That's what Voight's trying to do. Right. That's what Voight is trying to do. And like, so he keeps sacrificing people. So he's not the one getting injured. So he's not the one who's getting, killed and tortured and all that. But he's seeing people be dragged away by hooks into their flesh. Does he really think he's going to get some great reward at the end? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Seems
it really
like he's
doesn't.
given a pretty eternal reward. Probably not what he was thinking, but
No. Well, that is kind of the good question, or it is a good question, I guess, you said like, oh, this isn't a punishment. He's rewarded by being the big bad. But is that actually a reward? Maybe it's not. Like, because he wants to die.
A reward. It's not a reward for him, but like I'm sure the Cenobites think it's great.
Right? Well, he looks pretty pleased as punch at the end in that Christ symbolism. And he's all like, woohoo.
Give me a break. What I do like is how all of the Cenobites who have faces, because not all of them do.
That's true.
I like that the ones who have faces always look kind of amused by what's going on. I thought that was a pretty good choice. Because, like, if you think of the original Pinhead, let's not call him that. Clive Barker didn't like it. If you think of the original Pinhead, he just kind of looks like he's got this look in his face, and I think it's very effective. The actor who played him, I don't remember his name, but he's like, it's the "don't fuck with me" look.
Is it Doug Bradley?
Maybe, yeah. But these Cenobites are kind of more like, oh, you really sure you want to do that?
I know. There is a malevolent twinkle in their eyes. It's great.
Yeah. Like they're definitely enjoying this,
Yes. Yeah, very taking BDSM to like a whole new
Yes, I was thinking
level.
about that as I was watching it. I was like, if this is a metaphor for BDSM, man, talk about extremes. Yoy.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that might have been a better metaphor than the addiction metaphor.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Because I don't know. That might also be terrible because then, there have been so many bad depictions of BDSM in media that
yes,
glorify abuse that, which is not what BDSM is. So, who knows? Maybe that's, they want to stay far away from it.
Yeah. I think this movie's flaws so outweigh its virtues. Virtue I use advisedly, by the way. It's so deeply flawed that like no amount of good whatever will come out of it. What?
I don't know. I don't know. It got me. Yeah, because I liked this. I did. I think it is flawed. I agree. I think the lead performance is flawed. I think the writing is flawed, like severely. The metaphor is very flawed, but I did like this. It held my interest. The gruesome, gory effects really captivated me. Yeah. The production design, art design, the costumes, all of it. The score, I liked it. So for me,
yeah.
I was immersed. I didn't like these characters because I didn't know anything about them, but I was immersed in this world and I was kind of curious where it was going to go. And, I was like, I want to go back to the Christ symbolism for a minute because at the end I'm like, really? But then I was like, wait, it actually fits because another thing Clive Barker often infuses in his stories, a lot of religiosity. So
that's true.
I'm like, it actually does, fit. So
I've only read a few Clive Barker stories because they're so gruesome that it's like, he's like that rare horror writer who can be legitimately terrifying while also being fucking gross. Like I feel like a lot of horror writers are one or the other, or they choose one or the other, but he can do it at the same time. So I've never really been able to read him. I have read The Hellbound Heart, which I read when I was way too young. But I think the thing that bothered me most about this though is that the box, it's like whoever is holding the box can like use it almost as a weapon to like, to like stab somebody, and the Cenobites are like, ooh, you've been marked, skewer. Whereas in the first one, it's like, no, you have to play with the box. It's like you're the one, the box has chosen you. They make it clear, by the way, the box is yours, and this is just like, oh, well, if I do this thing, but hand it to this other guy and it stabs him in the hand, then he'll be taken. It's like, fuck you, man. That's bullshit.
Right. But it is kind of weird because they do also make it very clear that it's Riley's box. Like, that's very, so it's weird. It's like kind of straddling both sides in that it is very much her box. She gets to decide who's taken and who's not.
Why is it her box? because it's Goran.
Because she found it?
Box.
I know. It doesn't make sense. No,
you know?
I know. I agree. It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. Yeah. Other than just it's her box because we're told it's her box.
People are going to fucking trip over themselves trying to love this movie, aren't they? Oh, God. I'm going to have to fucking hear about how I'm wrong because I don't like Hellraiser.
I mean, that's the thing. I don't think you are wrong. I think, this didn't work for you very clearly. And I, like I said, I agree with your criticisms. I just enjoyed it more because of the good for me outweighed the bad. But I definitely understand. The thing I also want to say is because I read that this is, and I don't know because I didn't read this. So I don't know if it is closer to the source material, but I read that this was supposed to be closer to the source material.
I don't remember.
Which is weird because Clive Barker directed the first film. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of strange. But anyway, I've read other Clive Barker. But something about Clive Barker in his work is that he's also, like, as gruesome and gory as he is, he's also very erotic. Like in my favorite book, well, not my favorite book of his, Magica, there are a ton of great sex scenes. Like there's some disturbing things too, but it's very erotic. And so thinking of that, that's another reason why I kind of like the glee that the Cenobites get from watching people be tortured is that there's kind of that eroticism going on. I wish they kind of dug into it more, but I like that it's there. So, because that feels kind of like a nice little nod to Clive Barker. But yeah, but I'm sorry you didn't enjoy this. I mean, you really didn't enjoy it.
No, I really didn't. I'm just trying to think about, what a movie like this could be if the cast were just like 20% better.
Well, that's the thing. I think if you had a really great cast, like really great actors and really interesting characters, I think that would elevate it tremendously. And I think it would be a much, much better film. And it also needs much tighter editing and better writing. And
if you're going to hang it all on the Cenobites, then they should just be in it more too.
Yeah, I agree because they're great.
Yeah, and also the whole idea that you can prevent them from going in this room because of like some weird contraption you built. I don't buy that.
I don't buy it either.
Like I feel like once they're out of the box, it's kind of like they're out of the box.
Well, that it's interesting you say that because I was like, okay, it's kind of cool that Voight like built this estate as like a fortress, kind of as he calls it a cage to trap them. And that's kind of cool because it kind of certain things kind of resemble the puzzle box, like the way the ceiling cage like moves and stuff like that. And of course that's intentional. But the thing that kind of was weird to me is like, okay, they're driving away at first, trying to leave the estate, and because Nora's in the back and she's been stabbed by the box, and like things are opening, the dimension's opening behind them. So I'm like, wait, why couldn't the dimension open in the floor under the estate in the house?
Exactly.
Like what? Why? Like it opens in other random places. Why isn't it opening here? It didn't make sense.
No, unless all the rebar that they use to reinforce the fucking steel beams in this house and the concrete blocks like goes under the foundation by 40 feet and the box can only go down 37 feet. I don't know.
Maybe. But again, the fact that we're poking such holes in it is, again, of course there's a suspension of disbelief, but at the same time, if you're focusing on the flaws and the holes in logic rather than kind of that suspension of disbelief, there's a problem. Yeah. Also, my other small thing is that there wasn't enough Hee-ya Boss in this, and I love her. She's always a delight, and I'm always excited to see her, and I wanted more of her. But anyway,
maybe next time.
I digress. Well, since she's dead, I don't think so. But
yeah, that's probably true. Probably true.
Probably. Do you have any final thoughts on this film?
No. I don't. This is just so not a win. By the way, you don't even get to see her die on screen, I might add. It's just like she's like, I have emphysema and the Cenobites are coming for me. It's like, all right.
Did you want to see her die on screen?
You see everybody else die on screen. I mean,
yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe it's because, here's the famous supporting character, like the person we spent the most money on.
Yeah,
we can't afford her makeup now. I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I am intrigued by some of the choices.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's do a recap. So God's Creatures opened in theaters and on VOD on September 30th, so you can see it now. Dave, would you recommend it?
I wouldn't not recommend it.
So that's a yes.
So that's a yes.
It's a soft yes.
It's a qualified yes.
Okay, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend this. I think this is stunning and fantastic. And Hellraiser is streaming now on Hulu. I think it's safe to say you would say skip it.
I would say find all the hard drives where it exists and send them a virus that destroys the digital equivalent of this movie's negative. I mean, if you really want to go, if you really want to know how I feel.
All right.
Yeah.
That's okay. So I'm going to give it a qualified recommendation. I would say, yes, see it, but with caveats. There are issues with it, but I enjoyed enough of it. I think there's enough interesting things here to see. Dave thinks you should burn the negatives.
I also just I didn't mention this, but because I forgot about it, but it also, the whole gang trying to solve this mystery sort of reminded me of like Scooby-Doo and fucking Fred and Daphne and all that shit, except not nearly as much fun.
Maybe, that sounds like a great crossover. Maybe the next one should be Scooby-Doo and Hellraiser.
Scooby-Doo meets Pinhead.
Pinhead!
Yeah. Don't call me Pinhead. Yeah. Sorry. Cinnabite snacks. Well, now I've done it.
Sorry, folks. I was having almost an asthma attack there.
I apologize for my exuberance, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I now really want this Scooby-Doo Pinraiser.
I kind of do too.
Pinraiser, Pinhead, Hellraiser crossover to happen. That sounds amazing. Okay. Now that I've semi-composed myself. That is Spoilerpeeps Theater. We are Spoilerpeeps Theater. Thank you so much for listening. You can find Spoilerpeeps anywhere you get podcasts. We're on every podcast platform. You can also find us on our website, spoilerpeeps.com. You can follow us all over the place on social media. We're at Spoilerpeeps on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and TikTok. You can also email us, spoilerpeeps@gmail.com, or you can give us a call
at 862-21-PEACE.
Leave us a voicemail message. Tell us, Dave, you are so right. Hellraiser is terrible. Or no, Hellraiser is wonderful and fantastic and I loved it. And tell us why. We want to know. We always love hearing from you. So reach out to us on social media. Say hi. Text us. Email us. All that jazz. And if you like the show, please consider rating and reviewing us. That really helps us out. You can go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. That will take you to your preferred platform of choice to rate us. You can also rate us on Apple Podcasts, which helps us out a lot, gets the word out about the show. And you can also rate us on Spotify. And if you really, really like the show and you're not already a patron, and thank you, patrons, consider joining the show. For $5 a month, you get access to weekly bonus episodes. This week, we talk about the Canadian rom-com What If? We had a great time talking about that. You also get to vote in monthly polls to tell us what you would like us to talk about. Each month, we do different themes. And you get access to almost 300 bonus episodes. So you get a huge back catalog of fun times. And yeah. So that's it.
Yeah, I think you covered it.
I think I did. Woohoo! I'm trying to remember because I got so derailed by my laughing attack.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, it was a good time. So my name is Megan Kearns. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a member of BAFTA and Gallica. You can find me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld or on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinionS.
And my name is Dave Riedel. I write and I talk about movies. I am also a member of BAFTA, and you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Dave Sees Movies.
Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.